Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Also below this video you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcomed back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. Now, we are joined by the Adam Meakin, Neil, 10th Man, father of a stolen child, otherwise known as Refracted Curvature, and a whole bunch of people in Discord. So welcome, one and all.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. I'd like the pharmacist, Adam Meakin, to tell the ballers what an R deficiency can lead to.
Hello, guys.
Can lead to arthritis.
Yeah.
Good one, Nathan.
I can't top that, I don't think.
No, that was good. That was good.
Anemia was where I was headed.
So in the pre-show, we were discussing the 1960s drop launches into high altitude with parabolic manoeuvres, graciously presented by 10th Man and his images that we've gone through in the pre-show. But so that there's a bit of a break between that and anybody who's just heard it already, we're going to do housekeeping as we didn't do it yesterday, and then we'll get back onto that subject. Obviously, there's a lot of people cooing over the Richard Branson high altitude flights, so I think it's worthy of a bit more discussion. Anyway, in the meantime, any evidence of, poignant to the subject, side note, any evidence of a physical geometric sphere edge horizon formerly known as Earth curvature?
No, the horizon's an apparent position.
How do you derive a radius from an apparent position then?
You don't.
It will always exist in the model.
It only exists in the maths. And no, you don't derive anything from a non-tangent based horizon because you need to draw a straight line to it.
It requires some consideration.
So just for clarity, before we move on from this housekeeping subject, the horizon is not a physical geometric sphere edge to block things or bend at altitude. We've debunked it with an argument called the Black Swan. Any evidence of the R value, that's Earth radius?
No.
Well, hold on a sec. Every claim that they have is based on R. So there's got to be evidence for it, right?
Well, only indirect evidence, though. And yes, you will always end up with a presupposition, really, but you don't have to start out with it.
Well, this is where we're going to be... I'll just say this for the audience's benefit. This is where we're going to be ripping apart some of the claims that are coming from the high-altitude Richard Branson flights. And our admiration will come, and our jealousy will come, because we're all in agreement that we'd like to do it. So that will come as well. But in terms of the assertions, there is no physical geometric sphere edge horizon. That only exists in globe maths.
Well, I want to clarify that with regards to Branson. I'm going to jump in on the first question now. Neil deGrasse Tyson says you won't see curvature up there. So I'm just wondering, do the Virgin Galactic guys claim you will see curvature of the Earth up there? I'm not got clarity on whether they're claiming that.
Yeah, so fortunately, Neil was really conciliatory, played along beautifully, and told us all about how the guys over at whatever server, I don't know, were talking about the pictures from the high-altitude trip and how that's Earth curve. So, yes.
No, not all people saying, oh, look, there's Branson, look out the window, it's curvy, like the Baumgartner shot. Is Branson saying he'll take you up to see the curvature? Because that would be a contradiction of one of the high priests, Neil. He's categorically stated even that you won't see curvature, it's flat.
Almost. So you're buying into the magic trick that Richard Branson's
No.
forcing upon both sides then?
No, I'm wondering whether he's contradicting Neil deGrasse. Not, am I accepting the double speak? Yeah. I'm wondering whether it, because we said yesterday, with regards to their disclaimers, they'll take you past the Kármán line, theoretically space. Well, that's just an arbitrary distance they name. So you can do that. There's no legal disclaimer there. But is he going against a high priest rhetoric, is what I'm saying, by claiming you will see Earth curve?
It's certainly part of the imagery from the 60s.
Isn't there high definition video and pictures of
You're
of
missing
this
his point.
flight?
Right.
Just happened a few
Let me
days ago?
re-clarify. Hello. So it's clear. Adam's saying, is Richard Branson punting, selling the notion that you can go up on his trip and see, quote, Earth curve? Is that what he's punting or not, is what Adam's asking.
Not can you look at the picture and claim it's Earth curve? Is that part of his sales pitch?
I haven't heard him mention that, and I watched the whole live thing. Might claim it afterward at some point, but it was not part of the scenario.
Perfect. Anybody out there aware of any claims made by Branson that you can go up and see, quote, Earth curve? Anybody at all? If not, we'll assume not, because so far as I can dig into, there's been no claims I've got any objection to. I don't know if anybody else says, no, he's made this claim. Somebody said he went beyond the Kármán line. I had a look in that. No, he hasn't said that. It doesn't seem like he's claiming to go beyond what we experience in terms of the gas pressure that we experience. Now, if someone can correct me on that, I'll be happy to be corrected. But so far, so good. As far as I can tell, it's left to your devices to extrapolate out Earth curve out the windows if you're going to do that.
I had a question about that. When Neil deGrasse Tyson said that you can't see the curve from that beach ball, did he actually mention any kind of distance or related to like the Kármán line or anything where you would be able to see it? Or did he just completely leave that out?
Well,
Because
no,
I
he
don't
kind of
remember him saying that there was a certain distance after which you could see it. He didn't mention that.
Well, I mean, it's part of their maths, you realise. That's also doublespeak. It's a clever trick, because what he's doing is he's saying you can't see it from this altitude, yet simultaneously you've got Earth curve mathematics that say you can see it from the ground. And there's an advanced tab that recently Adam used a composite to his ends in terms of his calculations for how much it should bend from the ground in this composite. And it's also calculable, as I say, in the advanced tab of Metabunk's Earth curve calculator. Or let's give it its proper title, the Begging the Question Proof of Nothing Perspective Hijacking Earth Curve Calculator. Well, yeah, you've got two magic tricks going on. One is to say that when he says that stuff is flat, this is the clip we're talking about, he slaps the beach ball, which has automatically got you to reify as the ground beneath your feet, even though it's a bloody beach ball, spherical in shape. Well, he says you can't see Earth curve from an inch above the beach ball, or whatever he says is the scale equivalent. Well, when he's saying you can't see Earth curve from an inch above the beach ball, he means you can't see an Earth curve physical geometric sphere edge for a horizon from 1 inch above the beach ball. Well, okay, so we're going to be assuming that the horizon's Earth curve then, like it would be for an ant on a beach ball. There'd be an edge to the ball that it couldn't see past, and that would be the ant's geometric horizon on that beach ball. Well, that's not to say that it wouldn't still have a limit if you were out at the ocean and you held the ball up, and beyond that ball it's still going to have a horizon where the sky and land or sea appear to meet. It's just you've also got a geometric horizon because you're on a bloody ball. You would be necessitated to have a geometric horizon if you were on a ball. If we were on a ball, Earth, a sphere, we would have a geometric limitation to our view. It's the very thing asserted in their Earth curve maths. You just don't have that. It's not an actual position. So concerning yourself with this bend in this picture and how bendy it is, or whether or not you're high enough to see it bend, is to automatically reify the horizon into a physical edge to a sphere. And it isn't.
So I've got a couple of bits. Have you got the screen share up, mate?
I can take off my Skype imagery of the X15 over a curve and share your
This is where I've got, because it was me that said they were claiming space, and I know I'd read it somewhere, but this is the New Shepard and Virgins. So you got your Kármán line, look. internationally recognised as where space is, but we've also got 80.5, which would include the Virgin, above sea level, where space begins as recognised by the FAA and NASA. So they've dropped the level so they can get there, I think, by the sounds of it.
Hold on, that contradicts something I understood to be true. What did you say they classify as space? Because I've seen NASA classify it as 0, ground level is the beginning of space. So
I'm only going on this. So it's saying here that the FAA and NASA recognise it as 80.5 kilometres above sea level. And then Kármán line, the old one, is the internationally recognised.
I got you. So this seems like just being tricky with the words for the sake of his marketing. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I'm going to space according to NASA definitions, but not by internationally recognised definitions.
All of the above, assuming that the sky is a vacuum in violation of the second law of thermodynamics. We might as well add that here. Any evidence that you can have gas pressure without a container?
Yeah, it begins here. Look, either this blue line or this blue line is where the magic begins.
Magic? No, containment. To have gas pressure, not magic. It's talking about where the magic begins.
There's definitely no containment, look, because something solid's going up and through. Look. So there's definitely no. So it's either there is no containment there, or that isn't where suddenly a vacuum begins.
The whole suddenly a vacuum begins, or even if they claim, well, it's gradiated, it's not suddenly. Like no. No gas would be here if the sky was a vacuum.
You can have the word gradually becomes a vacuum, it's just as nonsensical. It's fine.
It still violates the second law. It's just a sidestep into a delta of gas pressure when we ask how you can have it in the first place. You know, if you've got this notion that the black area in this image that 10th Man provided of the X-15, if you want to claim that area, this black bit, is a 10 to the minus 17 torr vacuum, well, you see all this is all high pressure gas. And what it would want to do is evacuate. Now, if you want to assume that this little blue thin layer here is just some arbitrary designation for where the gas stops escaping into whatever volume it's got, yeah, that's a violation of natural law to assume that this is 10 to the minus 17 torr vacuum. It's absurd.
Look at the red lines, Nathan, on the diagram. You know, on the rocket side, on the left side, the New Shepard. Look at this is what it's suggesting the path of the gas particles is. Look, they hit the collision. Up they go, and then they're running out, look, and this one's got a bit more energy, but it's running out here and back down they come. It's an example of the farcicalness of the claim.
Well, they've got gas doing this parabolic manoeuvre in their assumption of gravity, which doesn't actually have any force attributable to it, but they assume that gas goes up to a certain height and goes, you know what, I'm going to sod this. I'm not going to keep going. Why would I do that into this available volume? You know what I mean?
That's exactly that. I've completely run out of kinetic energies. I hit the apogee point here, so I've got no other place to go. Even as a gas molecule, I've got to fall back down to Earth. That's their claim.
I'm happy to stick with these specifically, unless you want to throw axial rotation in before we jump to 10th Man's presentation. But just with those couple of housekeeping questions, we're right on topic and all warmed up for 10th Man to go through what he did in the pre-show. Are you up for that, 10th?
Yeah, let me just get the slides in order here. I'm ready.
Okay, I'll start on the slide that you started on last time, which was the X-15 Advanced Research Airplane.
Perfect. Yeah, anyone could do this. Just go to Google, hit X-15. I remember this, being my age, and here we go. So the X-15, back in the day. Here's the first picture of the pilot. NASA Dryden Flight Research Center, as you can see. Pete Knight is the pilot. Then you've got the B-52, the next picture, and the X-15 is attached underneath one of the wings. I believe we're going to see that they went up to about 45,000 feet before it was released. Here's an imagery showing that B-52 at 45,000 feet. And then once the X-15 is released, its rockets start to burn, and it climbs up to 250,000 feet. And then it comes back down in its descent. Takes about 3 minutes, seen there, and covers about 200 miles. And of course, conveniently, they got a sphere globe underneath it as a drawing. And then we come to this next picture, which is very interesting because I'd like to know who took this picture, if it is a picture, or is this like CGI? Because if the X-15 is let loose, it's going up, or is this on its descent down, and is the rocket still on? So this picture is like, who took it? Well, how about this one? This one, definitely, the next one, it's going up. So we know that this is climbing to 250,000 feet. Well, who took that picture? If the B-52 is the plane that releases it, there is no other plane or jet in the sky other than the X-15. Who took this picture with a curved Earth behind it? And they all signed it. Total fakery here. And then this next one, the last one. Now, this is way up there. You could see the edge of space. But that curvature is so phony because look at the land underneath it. How much of the Earth should you see? And it looks like they're over a very small part of the Earth there by the little features. So obviously, if you believe that this is real, then there's no hope for you.
Over planet New Orleans Parish.
Yeah.
So yeah, this technology is from the 60s. It's been done before, going up high. Whoopie doo. It's not exactly a miracle that he's doing this. The extrapolations that people take from it, which is to assert that you've got a physical bend in the horizon, which is not a sphere edge from a height that's already been achieved long ago, it's not really any sort of revelation. So the fact that there's so many people in my comments cooing about this is kind of laughable, really. I don't really, other than the explanation I had from Neil in the pre-show about people saying, yeah, we go up high and we've got pictures of our reified physical geometric sphere edge horizon. It's like, what else have you got other than the assumption of a sky vacuum in violation of natural law? What else have you really got from this? Nothing.
Nathan, I just put up 4 more pictures just as a contrast.
Yeah, they're up.
All right, so you can see this high altitude balloon with the imagery of a little stick figure guy or whatever. Look at the background there. Next picture. Low concave here. What happened to that nice curve?
It never
Next
was.
picture.
It never was physical, concave or otherwise. It was never physical to begin with. But feel free, carry on. My bad.
No, I agree. That I'm glad you said that because when you have a fisheye lens and it moves and bobs, you can catch it convex, concave, or straight. If your lens is not going to do that, then you actually have something that at least is part of reality because that's a real photograph. As you can see here with the little teddy bear or whatever that is. And then the next picture, I can't make out the writing, but this is an older one, but same thing. How in the world can you have a curved Earth and all the X-15 backgrounds, and then when you take a high-altitude balloon, you don't even see a curve? In fact, you see it kind of warping every now and then. Wake up. Please wake up.
Okay, so quick shout out to Mark, is it Clarkson? Who says, I'm trying to get my head around this pressure gradient that keeps being asserted. Sorry if this has been covered. No, don't apologise. Thank you very much indeed for the super chat, Mike. Gas pressure gradient is a delta of gas pressure. So first you have to have gas pressure, then you can have a gas pressure gradient. Our question, presumably has been put by you to an anti-flat earther, is how can you have gas pressure in the first place without a container? So their response is to take it to a delta of gas pressure that they already assume they have, ignoring the question, how have you achieved gas pressure if the sky is a vacuum? That would be a space for it to fill. And they say, well, we've got a gas pressure, negating your question, gradient, delta of gas pressure they haven't explained yet. So if you are or if you have the rebuttal of, well, we have a gas pressure gradient, your response is no. My question is, how did we achieve gas pressure in the first instance? How do you get the gas pressure in the first place if the sky is a vacuum. So if you want to conceptualize this, Mike, given that you've spent £5 on this super chat, thank you very much again. If you're a fledgling Earth in a heliocentric, assumed to be spherical world of vacuum, and there is no gas pressure yet, now by whatever means, the first gas particle emerges from the ground. What's it going to do? Well, it's just going to follow gas behavior. That's what it is gas. So it's just going to do what gas does. That would be to say that it emerges from the ground. In whatever direction it comes out, it will continue in that direction until it either collides with something, or that's it. It just has to collide with something, or it just keeps going. So that first gas particle comes out of the fledgling heliocentric bullshit sphere Earth and heads out into the vacuum. Just keeps on going. At no point does it reach an arbitrary position, say, here, and go, you know what, I'm not going to behave like gas anymore. I'm going to head on back down. That's not what gas does. So given that explanation, Mike, you'd never achieve gas pressure to then achieve the delta of gas pressure gradients. So the gas has got to be bouncing around for it to develop into a gradient. You first got to have gas pressure. That would be gas pressing. And if there's nothing to press on, it's not pressing. So you've got no pressure. But they just skirt your question, skirt your issue with the second law of thermodynamics violation, sky vacuum, by just assuming they've already got gas pressure because we're breathing it. And therefore, how do you, flat earther, explain the gradient? It's like, I don't. I want to know how we've got gas at all if the sky's a vacuum. We'd all be dead. So there you go, there's my explanation, and why you're getting it is because it's a straw man delta of the question you're asking. Just negates the question, assumes Earth can have gas pressure to develop into gradients to need an answer from you, when it wouldn't. It would just fill the vacuum of the sky. If it was a vacuum, it isn't. The sky vacuum is fake. Anyone want to add anything to this or on the X15 presentation?
Just one last slide, if you can show it.
Yeah, the curvy GoPro.
Yeah, so here it is, a high altitude balloon on its ascent, and obviously it hasn't gone high enough. And why is the Earth curving here? And why is it that when it's up there, wherever up there was, you know, hundreds of thousands of feet up, it's not curving?
Because it's an effect of
It's
the
the
lens.
camera.
I mean, what's not curving? You mean the edge of the view of this lens, which you could calculate based on things like the aperture, the diffraction limit that it's capable of resolving with the Rayleigh criterion. It's lens-based, it's optical. This line where the sky appears to meet the ground, it's nothing to do with any physicality that would bend, and everything to do with the optics that it's being viewed by. The limitation of that particular location, which is only apparent, is also governed by the optics and the conditions on the day. Sod all to do with Earth curve.
Yeah. It's all optics. It's all effect of the lens, but they use that magic trick to fool people.
Anybody know how long Branson's in the air in his drop flight in total?
Wasn't it like seconds? It wasn't very long.
Oh, 3 minutes, I thought.
3 minutes.
I believe it was 4 minutes of weightlessness, apparently.
We're getting a lot of numbers. 4 minutes of weightlessness, which means that after leaving the ground, just hint at where we're going with this. Any evidence of axial rotation of the airspace variety? And then we'll go on to this assertion that we see drift from the ground as things seem to drift away because we're turning beneath them on a spinning Earth. Obviously, we're going to see that effect in this flight, right? We're going to see it seem to drift away.
Need a radius for that.
Took the words out of John's mouth. He's still here.
I can't have him taking a credit all the time. I got to get some positive sayings in there.
He's not here.
Got numbers, Nate.
Oh, excellent. Here we go.
Branson stated the entire flight will take about 90 minutes, so an hour and a half, including the ascent up to launch position, release, flight to space, and glide back to Earth for a runway landing.
90 minutes, eh? Well, according to the claim that Earth turns...
22.5.
Say again?
22.5 degrees.
That's where he is. Okay.
Well, that's what he should experience, shouldn't it? in terms of in that hour. And if it's 15 degrees an hour, then it's 22.5 degrees of rotation in that hour and a half.
Indeed. Earth should be, according to the heliocentric claim that we have Coriolis effect, turning beneath this flight for us to observe it seem to drift away as we turn beneath it. That is what is claimed. Does that occur? I'll just answer instead of the stony silence being left out there. No, Earth isn't turning underneath anything. Even though it's claimed to be turning underneath everything at 15 degrees an hour, like footballs and bullets. It's claimed Earth turns beneath them to give us Coriolis effect. That would be an effect that we see when things traversing an inertial reference frame from our vantage point seem to have a curved trajectory based on us turning beneath them. That doesn't happen. Any other evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety? You're all super keen.
A ring laser gyroscope rotating perpendicular to the Earth.
That'd be a
Right.
claim that Earth's turning beneath the gyroscope, though, wouldn't it? Which would cause the same effect in Branson's flight, i.e. Earth turning underneath it in the 90 minutes that it's in the air. But that doesn't happen.
Right, and the North Pole is not in the United States either, so...
Yeah, there's no 15 degrees an hour drift observable from the ground because we're turning beneath anything. If there was, you'd launch a drone, it would hover in the air, and it would whiz away from you, seem to whiz away from you, at 1,000 miles an hour. Because you're turning beneath
but
it.
the air's moving with the Earth.
Maybe
so
if the
you're
drone was
moving
a
through the
holographic
air,
projection,
you're
then it
still
would turn.
attached.
Could try again, Rams.
Well, the air apparently is all attached to the Earth and rotating with it somehow. And so if you are still in the air, then you're still attached to the surface.
All right, there's three
essentially.
problems with that. Number one, no drift then, no Coriolis deviation. Number two, that kind of craps all over Neil deGrasse Tyson's assertion that when you kick a football, it drifts through goalposts because Earth turned beneath it. From your vantage point of the sand, seeming to curve through, but actually just Earth turning beneath the ball, because obviously that happens. Yeah? Third, it violates a couple of natural laws. First and foremost, the first law of thermodynamics. To assert that Earth and atmosphere, an oxymoron, Earth doesn't take the shape... air doesn't take the shape of a sphere. Well, if you were to assert that it does, and it tracks along with the ground beneath it as it spins at vast rates, 1,000 miles an hour on the equator, that would mean that the velocity of the air tracking with the ground beneath it is increasing velocity as it goes up in altitude. Absolutely absurd, violation of the first law of thermodynamics. Secondly, in that bracket of the third thing that it's screwed up with, no drift being the first, screws all over Neil deGrasse Tyson's assertion that you've got the drift for the ball to go through the goal. You know, I've forgotten the third point now in a second bracket because I've got so many things in my list that this is in violation of. You know, you've got to have drift. You haven't got it if you're asserting that it's all, that was it, velcroed to the ground. Gas is unbonded. So there's four issues. You don't have gas velcroed to Earth in violation of the first law, increasing velocity, and crapping all over Neil deGrasse Tyson's assertion that things leave the ground and drift because of it from your point on the stands. And it also craps all over the assertion we got Coriolis effect. There you go. I summarised all 4 points. Thank God.
It's no good. That pretty much destroys that one, doesn't it?
But also the air layers would have to be traveling faster as you gained altitude.
That's what I mean when I say it's a first law of thermodynamics violation. They'd have to increase their velocity.
I think this is just a huge and obvious problem.
Well, in response to you, not really, because the globe claims we do have drift, and my response to you is a response to an anti-flat earther claim that we shouldn't see Coriolis effect. It's all travelling together, giving us absolutely no observable effect to observe, first of all, and contradicting the effect that we're supposed to see, 15 degrees an hour drift, and begs the question that we're turning with no discernible effect to notice with us turning. in violation of the first law of thermodynamics. So it's a bit of a clusterfuck from the anti-flat Earth side. We've got to be honest about this now. It used to be able to be scrambled up like scrambled eggs by them when they came here and debated Coriolis effect, because they weren't debating Coriolis effect. They were actually arguing against it the whole time. But now that's all had some clarity given, we've swept up all the mess, and it's reasonably easy to concisely summarise how messed up their claims of us having Earth turn beneath things actually are. We're now back to the point where we can say, yeah, you going after Brian Mullen's job, George Netanyahu, because he asserted that Earth should be turning beneath us to give us 15 degrees now drift we don't see. Yeah, that's no longer tolerable to just say, don't you understand how Earth moves with everything else and it conserves momentum? Because that's an anti-flat Earth claim now, isn't it, George? You went after a man for an anti-flat Earth claim that pisses in the face of globe claims that we have drift. Something that Brian was pointing out we don't have. Yeah, that's why I had to keep that particular argument had to be kept well under wraps. And if anybody with any degree of intelligence tried to challenge it, they had to go after that person pretty swiftly, because that scrambled eggs needed to stay scrambled without any clarity being given. Yep, so they had to go through extreme lengths back in the day when it came to Coriolis effect. Now we just say, you globers, people who think you're on a globe, not anti-flat earthers who just hate us, but people who actually think they're on a globe, should have Earth turning beneath things to give you 15 degrees an hour drift. We'd notice that. Your drone would drift away at 1,000 miles an hour on the equator, and it doesn't. Any evidence of the distance to the sun, as we are kind of going through housekeeping, albeit at a mellow rate?
What is the sun?
I don't know. That's me.
How can we measure the distance to something
We
if we don't know
can't.
what it is?
They assume
You need a
Venus has
radius
got the
for
same
that,
R
right?
value as
Also need a
Earth.
radius?
Yeah, they need a radius, exactly.
Yeah, it's over.
Yeah, they need an Earth radius, which is assumed and debunked, and they no longer have a physical geometric sphere edge to measure tangents to give them the R value, which they superimpose on Venus. If you're a newbie watching, ever wonder why they call Venus Earth's twin? Christian Huygens arbitrarily assigned our R value, which is debunked by the Black Swan, to Venus, so they could use Kepler's third law and scale it, and give you the distance to the Sun at 93 million miles. Also, the speed of light, with your 1 AU. Yeah, that convention's been crapped all over recently as well, thanks to MC McBugger-eating idiot and quantum erasers ripping apart of their assertions about this one-way speed of light. They don't have it. It's a convention that they start working outside of when they say we can track the distances when we get radar bounce. It's like, really? When you see a bit of fuzz in the signal, Bob from JPL says that's definitely the return signal at the timing I'm expecting, based on a heliocentric R value that gives me that timing and the AU measurement. It's a bit of a mess for heliocentrists at the moment, really. They don't have anything. It's all dead because of the R value being debunked by the Black Swan. Very amusing that it is for me.
Yeah, the R value seems to come up in a lot of these arguments, and it ends it.
Yep. It used to be that when we thought we'd got to that point last time, where Mick West admitted that they begged the question and just assumed R regardless, i.e. every argument for a globe starts with an assumption of R, their rebuttal was to say, well, of course we just beg the question. Or to paraphrase, well, we already know we're on a sphere. i.e. I'm going to use a logical fallacy because I'm already assuming my outcome, and that's perfectly reasonable. That's what they told us. You know, I was aghast at the time. I'm like, oh, this is the end of the argument. They've admitted they're begging the question. They're just assuming their outcome. They automatically assume they're on a sphere. But to highlight to them that you're automatically assuming a sphere, they just went, yeah, and? So we had to go in right up their level, dig in with them, with their assumption in mind of the R value, and debunk it within their begging the question fallacy, which is way beyond anything anybody would ever have to do in a debate normally. But here we are, we've got everyone with their sphere belief, and, you know, that's held fairly deep and dear to most people, so you can't really blame them for holding on to that logical fallacy as a last-ditch attempt to believe they're standing on a spherical surface. You're not, by the way. Earth's obviously and observably flat.
Well, it's kind of that, but it's also the other part where pride kicks in. When these same people are into challenging other falsehoods, do not even attempt to challenge this one when proven that it's false because they don't have R. And it's as if some defensive mechanism pops up out of people who would normally be curious to say, what did you say? And oh my gosh, instead of that, they immediately resist, they immediately fight, because it's such a big thing that if they got fooled on this one, how do they look?
I know why. It's the way they made it sound. Flat Earth. You see the boat falling off the edge when you went to school, and everybody laughed. It's a joke. It's a mockery.
Oh, I could kiss you, Neil. That was perfect. That's a brilliant segue into the double-speak rhetoric of the Flat Earth Society with their boat falling over a pizza pie edge that they assert we claim as a flat Earth straw man. Basically, we don't claim that. But that's what the controlled-up narrative would have you believe we as flat earthers assert the Earth to be, with boats falling off the edge of it. Meanwhile, in literal terms, the begging the question, proof of nothing perspective hijacking Earth curve calculators literally assert that boats go over the edge of a sphere Earth. So while we, formerly, because we highlight it here, were mocked for having boats that go over edges. What? I don't have a boat. What are you talking about? Here it says it, Flat Earth Society say you, a flat earther, have a boat falling over the edge, you idiot. No. In contrast, you reified the horizon, globe-believing idiot, into a physical sphere edge for boats to fall over. So in fact, it's you globe-believing clown, that has boats falling over edges, and we've debunked your horizon as being an edge for boats to fall over. But you actually do have boats falling over edges if you're a globe believer. It's right there in your Earth curve maths. You ask us to tell you how many feet and inches are missing from the bottom of the boat as it's gone over your sphere edge. Even though that's not a physical location to block things, it doesn't have any physical attributes, and we've debunked the geometry that's asserted when you claim it's blocking things. Because you don't have a physical tangent anymore, we've debunked it with the Black Swan. But meanwhile, you do actually have boats going over an edge, globe-believing idiots. Not us. That's just a straw man controlled up narrative that idiots put out, and so you can laugh at us when you've actually got the one with the boats falling over edges. Just so you know.
Well, I was just saying, hold on 1 second. It always amazed me that a guy like Kent Hovind don't jump on that. And I think Kent is right. It's all about pride. Got to learn how to swallow that pride and jump in there, and don't worry that you're going to be mocked, because we're mocking them now.
They used to assert it with a bit of word magic, and they would say things go behind the horizon. But I don't think that's a correct description of what happens in reality, to say the word behind.
As soon as you say behind, that implies physicality, a physical obstruction to block it. When you're asked as a flat earther, why does the sun go down? Same thing. Down? What do you mean down? Well, it's going behind the edge of my sphere that's the horizon now, isn't it? No, it isn't.
Yeah, but we say sun up, sun down, right? It's in the rhetoric, isn't it?
But it's just a bit of word magic is what I was saying. It's a turn of phrase,
So then where does the sun go? If Earth is not revolving around and was just going out of our sight, it's just moving away. Is it making
going
a circuit like the Bible
horizon.
says?
Going into the horizon, not behind it.
Can I ask Tenth a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, Tenth, if you get your sextant out and you're lucky enough to be directly under a star, whatever it is, but you match its GP, and you travel away from that star, bloody phone, you travel away from that star, what will happen to the apparent height, as you would call it, or its angle? What would happen to that? Would it stay the same as you move, or would it diminish?
It would obviously diminish, and the angle will tell you. So if you're underneath it, you're 90. You're directly underneath it. So zenith, directly overhead. You're like right over the GP, geographical position of it. And if you move away, yeah, go on.
So then, in this case, the height, relative height, or the angle that you measure of the star, you don't attribute that to its height when navigating, you attribute it to the angle giving you a GP. I'll mute up. It's chaos.
Well, the dogs are going. Yeah, the GP, the height of the sun is somewhere, meaning its zenith position, normally around 12 noon for most places, but it can vary, over the Earth somewhere. And then you're somewhere over the Earth, and that angle, you're shooting with a baseline to the GP, which is straight, and then your angle to that sun, let's say. And let's say it says 60 degrees. And then you go to and it says, this is how many miles you're away from the GP of that sun, where it's directly overhead, from the place you took it, which is somewhere on the circle of equal altitude. So the angle can be translated into nautical miles once you go through the books and do the calculations. So the only time it's directly over you is when it's directly over you. And as it moves away, because it's moving, not the Earth, then that's the angle, much like a shadow would cast a stick, and the shadows in the afternoon get lower and lower and lower. If you've ever seen that, it's a beautiful sight.
Was that a sufficient answer, Adam?
He's got dogs barking.
I know he's got dogs barking, so I'm trying to fill the dead air.
Yeah, I mean, if you've ever been at a golf course or a park and the sun is going down, as they say, going away from us, the shadows are sideways and lengthier, and it's, I mean, we've all seen it. So that's no longer at your 90. It'd have to be directly over your head to be at your 90. So that's somewhere around 10, 15, or 5 degrees above the horizon at that point.
Earth is flat.
The only way that a sailor at sea with a knowledge of the sextant can know where he's at is if he could triangulate. And to triangulate, he's got to have a baseline that goes to the GP from the where the water is hitting the hull of his boat. That's where you make your dip correction, because if you're 9 feet above the water when you're using the sextant, you must make a correction and take it down to sea level, so that straight baseline could reach to where you're shooting that sun and say, okay, I've got a straight line here. I've got a nice tangent line here to the GP. And then my angle to it in the sky, for example, say it's 35 degrees. You go to the books and it says, oh, you're 3,000 miles away. Well, how do they know that? Well, because it's got to be, excuse me, it's got to be overhead somewhere on the Earth at a 90. And then your angle to it is 35 in this illustration. And there's your triangulation right there. 2 straight lines. You need to be the vertex. You're the corner to get the angle. No other way to get an angle. You can't do it on a curved surface. Angle and curved surfaces don't even mix.
I didn't actually have your imagery up, by the way, but you did a good verbal job.
Yeah, it's okay. I mean, people have seen it before. And I mean, just look up the word angle. Look up the word corner and vertex. If you're going to say the sextant measures the angle, which is what it does, then you must be held to what creates an angle. Can you create an angle? Open question to all. Can you create an angle without straight lines?
I've got your picture of
Meeting
a
at a
circle
corner.
of equal altitude up to just to summarize what 10th's talking about. This is your star, or the sun in this example, and your GP is at the bottom of it. If you're measuring this from any position to any star to triangulate your fix, is that what you call it when you get all 3?
Yeah. Yeah.
You need to measure a straight line from your position here to the GP of the star and measure the angle to get your triangle. Well, if this bottom line was curving away from you, that would be unachievable.
And it must have a right angle. The star directly above to the surface of the Earth is one straight line. From that GP to you is the other straight line, and that creates the right angle.
Perfect.
You can only use a sextant on a body of water, right?
Repeat.
Can you only use a sextant on a body of water?
No. No, you can use it for on land. You can do it. They even say you can do it use it to do the stars from land. Yeah, no. They even
But
have
what if there
artificial horizons. You can buy hang on. You can buy an artificial horizon. You can make your own artificial horizon, and you can have the reflection of the sun hit the pool of water or molasses on a plate. Yeah, some people use the old way, a plate full of molasses, and you can see the sun glare, and you can practice using a sextant with an artificial horizon. It gives you the same proper readings. There's some rules to it, but just look up artificial horizon, you'll see it. It's been a tremendous journey for me to investigate. I'm still saving money to buy a proper sextant. I'm sure the $1,500 ones will be on sale soon because I don't want to buy the plastic one. But again, I'm kind of torn because I know this can be much simpler. They've done it this way. The math required, the calculations required to go to the different books, site reduction tables, the nautical almanac, all these different gyrations of things you got to do can be very simplified. I mean, imagine if they came out with a book. This is just my thought. I'm not sure if it could work yet, but imagine if they already know where the sun is at every given moment or second, which by the way they do, and they reverse it. And so instead of you going through all the different calculations, all you do is take an angle. So if you take the angle and then they had the book much easier, since they know where the sun is, they can give you exactly your circle of equal altitude based just on an angle. Instead of you doing all these different things, all you got to do is minus for dip correction and make sure your index error is because people drop a sextant or it gets bumped against something, and before doing it, you got to make sure your zero on the sextant is a true zero. So there's an index error correction you got to do. There's a dip correction you got to do. Very minute refraction correction you got to do, especially if you shoot 15 degrees above the horizon, as we discussed earlier, no more than 1 or 2 nautical miles if you didn't do the refraction, so no big deal. It can make it a lot easier because they know where it is, and all I should be able to do is say, hey, I got an angle of 30 degrees to it. Oh, okay, well, that puts you here in this circle because we know where it is in the center. That'd be so much easier.
Did you have another question, the guy who asked that from Discord?
That was me. And I don't have another question about that, but I have a question about what John was saying about the modus. I think he said modus polens with a P. Is that what he said?
Yes. He's not here now, actually. He's not here, but okay. If I can answer, I'll try.
So
oh, he is like here. Sorry, he is here. Are you listening, John? Uh-huh. No, he's not. Go ahead and ask anyway.
So, can you repeat what he said?
Basically, if the Earth's flat, then the Earth will be measured flat. Or if the Earth is measurably flat, then we will measure it flat.
So then my question is wouldn't that have to be done on a body of water too? Because if you're measuring it on ground, like it's technically not flat. There's hills and all sorts of stuff in the way, right?
Yeah, you have to obviously account for topology if you're doing it on land. But by the same token,
the purpose of it going over sea and you using the horizon is it's kind of a self-leveling device, so that you know the angle you're going to measure is from that perpendicular to the plane. Obviously, if you tilt it down, etc., etc. So it's a ancient acceptance that the horizon is your vanishing point, but that's why you use it, which is why Tenth was talking about having an artificial horizon if you can't actually see off to the vanishing point. So it's not actually the ground you're on that's the issue. It's you're using that as a stabilizing point for your sextant.
And also, everything is measured from mean sea level as well, or the ground.
Okay, thanks. That's all I was just curious about.
That's when they say a mountain is 20,000 feet. Where's the start of that? Sea level.
I'm sorry, I can answer his question now. I was messing with the kids. Geodetic surveyors, planar surveyors, anybody that works in architecture of any kind measures a plane. It's just how we have to measure the Earth. That's how it is.
Okay, I'll expand on that a little bit because there's also an assumption that they can make to weasel in the Earth's sphere whilst measuring it flat. So you can make the assertion that you're taking your position, you figure out where your position is, and then reference where you are to a datum. And from that datum, you can then draw out a tangent plane based on your assumption of your position in the first instance being on a sphere. So the tangent bit being tangent to the horizon, plane bit being that's what you're going to actually measure, plane, a flat surface. So what they do is they dispense with the assumption that the Earth's a sphere by referencing the datum which suggests Earth's a sphere, and then actually measuring it flat. So that's what you might also come across, just in case someone says, no, my proof is the WGS84. And you go, okay, well, that's just a model or a datum. What does that prove? And they'll indicate that when you go to a particular location, you can reference the datum, which is spherical, and therefore, when you measure out a plane, that means you're on a sphere. But they just do it either before or after. If that makes sense. Hopefully you'll ask if not.
No, that's good. I have another question about gas too later on.
Consult your doctor.
Nice one.
Hey, feel free. Go ahead.
I'm just wondering about for gas, like, okay, if you have an empty container, basically a vacuum, and then you put a little bit of gas in, and the gas expands to fill the container, is the gas, I can't even describe what I'm trying to say. Is the gas completely filling the container, and then it's like a full salt, like I'm not solid, but it's like all the way through. Like if you put your hand through it, your hand would be touching gas all the way through, even if there's very little gas. Or if there's a very little gas and you somehow get your hand in there and you pass your hand through it, is there a vacuum in between the gas particles?
No.
That are in there?
There's gaps between, but the lack of gas at all would be your description of a vacuum. How little there is floating around in a given area. So there's nothing else for the gas to collide within a given area, then you can start defining vacuums. But what you're saying is, if you've got gas dispersed within a container, does it A, disperse equally? Yes, it does. That's the first question dealt with. The second thing is, as you move your hand through it, does that mean that if you're not touching any of the gas particles, moving your hand through a vacuum? Well, yes, but because of the velocity of the gas that's in that container, there is zero chance that you could move your hand through it without one of the gas particles hitting you as you did it. Even if there was just one in there, it would definitely hit you while you moved through, or escape through the gap that you managed to put your hand through the container with.
Oh, that's wild. I don't. So one gas particle could be moving like at some of the fastest speeds. Like I don't know, the speed of light's debunked, but like basically the speed of light.
No, thousands and thousands, about 5,000 miles an hour, I think, at standard RTP, your average thing.
There you go. So if you picture a small jar with you, let's say you can't actually physically feel it, but you can put a glove that's inside another container, so you can sort of put your hand inside it, right? Well, with it moving at that speed, how many thousands of times do you think that single gas particle is going to hit that glove when you put your hand in for a second or two? It's a lot.
Think about a balloon. If you think about a balloon, you've just described the gaps between the particles, and at any one frozen moment in time, they're there. But you don't see a balloon really oscillating. But the thing, there's nothing, one thing holding, there's no structure inside. There's just thousands, millions and millions and millions and trillions of collisions against the container that's holding that elasticity out there, keeping it stretched. But there's nothing like if you filled it with water, where it's static. Yeah, it's being held there by the number of collisions, not anything structural.
Yeah, and that comes back to the guy originally when he was from Super Chat saying, well, what about the gas pressure gradient? It's like, to have that develop, you first got to have all those collisions going on with the walls of the container for there to be the gas pressure. So in the same way I'm saying, well, you don't see an oscillating balloon because you've got like 5 gas particles in there, and sometimes they hit one little square inch of it, and then sometimes they hit another, so you see it bounce. No, you're talking about millions and millions and millions of collisions going on continually. And it essentially, as far as you can tell, is just an equilibrium, a balloon that's at the same basic shape and size constantly because it's at constant pressure. It's got a constant amount that you can calculate of gas hitting the walls of the container, in this case a balloon. Well, that's what gas pressure is. The force exerted on the walls of a container. That's what it is. That's what gas pressure is. So the notion that the sky is a vacuum and the gas we're breathing has nothing to press upon is ludicrous. Yeah, this picture on screen right now, if this black area was 10 to the minus 17 torr, all it would be is an area that this gas at high pressure would vacate into. That's what gas does.
Has someone taken a single gas particle and like isolated it to be able to study it? Is that something that happened?
Yes, me. I have a very clever machine. No, I don't know.
Well, you can't see individual molecules, can you? So the way it's kind of understood and expressed is with Brownian motion, which you look under a microscope at smoke and you'll see the little particles hitting each other, the little solid smoke particles. Now, that's a demonstration, a model of what's going off at a much smaller scale, because the reason those little smoke particles are moving is because they're being hit by the gas particles. So it kind of shows you a much slower rate and I think what's kind of going off. But no, you can't see that because you can't see an atom, can you? Other than you can see the effects.
Perfect. With that, I'll say if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams, then stay tuned as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So a huge, massive, enormous thank you, first and foremost, to Discord and Google for making today's live show possible. But of course, a massive thank you to all of you for smashing the super chat, hopefully liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, and becoming a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on either premiering stream. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!